In the blistering Nevada heat, a utility worker unscrewed a corroded cap from a drain pipe behind an abandoned rest stop off Route 95. The pipe had been clogged for years, dry as bone. But inside he found something strange, wedged in the rusted curve of the pipe, partially wrapped in desert grass and melted plastic. A gold ring. At first it looked like trash, but stamped on the inside were two names, one barely legible: Angela and Mason, 1983. The utility worker didn't know it yet, but that ring had been missing for 20 years. And the woman who wore it, Angela Merritt, had vanished without a trace. Angela Merritt's shift ended just after 9:45 p.m. on the evening of August 18, 1987. It had been a quiet Tuesday at the Silver Spoon Diner, a weather-worn pit stop on the edge of Tonopah, Nevada. One of those places where the jukebox only played two songs correctly, and the booths were patched with duct tape and prayer. Angela had worked there for nearly 6 years. Locals knew her smile, knew how she remembered the regulars' orders, and how she always kept a pen in her hair like it belonged there. She wore white sneakers that squeaked on the linoleum floor, and a locket with her son's baby picture inside. The kind of woman who didn't make noise in the world, but left a deep impression in the hearts of those who knew her. That night, she clocked out, said goodnight to her coworker Gina, and mentioned she was picking up Cody from the neighbor's house before heading home. But she never arrived. When Cody's babysitter, Dolores Finch, called Angela's landline the next morning and got no answer, she assumed car trouble. But by evening, after no word, no sign, and no contact, she phoned the police. 2 days later, Angela's green 1982 Dodge Aries was found at an abandoned rest stop 60 miles west, just off Route 95. The rest stop had been partially shut down for maintenance, with only one flickering light overhead and an out-of-order vending machine buzzing nearby. There were no security cameras. Her keys were still in the ignition. The passenger side door was ajar, just slightly, like someone had either exited quickly or been pulled out. Her purse sat on the floorboard. Her white sneakers were side by side under the dash. On the dashboard, a half-drunk can of Diet Coke, warm and fizzless. There were no signs of struggle, no shattered glass, no bloodstains, no drag marks in the dirt, no tire impressions besides her own. It was as if Angela had evaporated. The search began that same day. Helicopters scanned the area for heat signatures. Bloodhounds were brought in, their noses low and eager, but they lost the scent within yards of the rest stop. Officers walked grids through the desert for days, eyes squinting against the sun, turning over every rock and bone-dry tumbleweed. They found nothing. Not her, not a trace. Just wind and heat and silence. Theories multiplied like weeds. Some said she ran off, tired of the grind, of raising a child alone, of being stuck in a town with more rumors than opportunity. But those who knew her scoffed at that. Angela wouldn't leave Cody, not for a minute, and certainly not forever. Others looked closer to home. Her ex-boyfriend, Cody's father, had a reputation for drinking and disappearing himself. He had moved to California in '86, but some said he'd been spotted in Nevada that summer. Police questioned him. He denied seeing her. Then there was her former manager at the diner, let go for repeated harassment, and not quietly. Angela had filed an internal complaint just months before he was dismissed. He denied everything, claimed he hadn't spoken to her since. And then there was the trucker, a regular at the diner. Out-of-state plates. New Mexico, they thought. He always sat in Angela's section, always lingered too long. Angela once told a co-worker she was going to report him after she saw his rig parked near her apartment late at night. But the report never happened. Nothing ever did. By 1988, leads dried up. By 1989, the case file gathered dust in a cabinet 2 drawers down from active cases. And by 1990, Angela Merritt's disappearance was officially classified as cold. But Cody never stopped wondering, and the desert, unforgiving and patient, kept its secret just a little while longer. Cody Merritt was 4 years old the night his mother vanished. He remembered 2 things: the smell of cinnamon gum on her breath when she kissed him goodnight, and the sound of her car engine pulling away from the curb. Everything after that was fog. Shadows of neighbors' voices, cold cereal in the morning, his aunt's hands shaking as she pulled him into a too-tight hug. She never came back. His aunt Denise did her best. She moved into Angela's small duplex, turned the spare room into Cody's bedroom, and tried to shield him from the speculations swirling around their town like desert dust. But even as a boy, Cody could feel the absence humming in the walls, the unanswered phone calls, the way grown-ups whispered when he entered a room. He became the kid who didn't talk much. At school, he was polite but distant. He'd sit by the window during roll call, eyes fixed on the parking lot like he expected a green Dodge Aries to appear and make everything make sense again. Teachers said he was bright but distracted, quiet but off in his own world. No one ever said the word trauma. At home, he built a shrine under his bed, a cardboard box taped at the corners, filled with the only pieces of his mother no one could take. Inside, a faded Polaroid of Angela holding him on his first birthday, both of them wrapped in a rainbow quilt, a silver necklace with a tiny turquoise charm, her Sunday piece, worn to church and never on weekdays. And the note. It was scribbled on the back of a gas station receipt, written in hurried pencil strokes. "Back soon. Love you more than the moon." He kept it folded in an old Altoids tin. Some nights he'd pull it out and read it like scripture. Other nights, he'd hold it in his hands without opening it at all. He was 12 the first time he heard someone call it a cold case. A substitute teacher had recognized his last name during roll call and asked if he was related to that woman who went missing back in the 80s. The word stung. It didn't feel right. It made it sound clinical, forgotten. He didn't sleep for 2 nights. By the time he was 15, he had stopped asking questions. The adults never answered them anyway. And by 19, after one too many birthdays with an empty chair and no candles, he finally said it aloud, once, in a whisper he never repeated. "She's not coming back. Not in a dream. Not in a letter. Not in any way that mattered." But even then, through all the silence, all the lies, and all the years, he never got rid of the box. He never stopped looking at that photo. And he never stopped hoping the desert would give something back. The ring should have disintegrated in that pipe. But it didn't. It had been wedged deep inside the corroded bend of a drainage system behind an abandoned rest stop. A pipe dry for decades, half choked with sand, desert grass, and sun-melted plastic debris. A maintenance worker clearing the system for demolition noticed the glint, gold, dulled by time, and fished it out with gloved hands. At first, he assumed it was cheap costume jewelry. Then he noticed the engraving inside. Angela and Mason, 1983. The name Angela struck a nerve. He remembered the rumors, the waitress who disappeared. He told his supervisor, who contacted the Nye County Sheriff's Office. Within 48 hours, the ring was booked into evidence. It made the local news that weekend. A 3-paragraph blurb beneath the fold. Possible clue in 1987 missing person case. Cody Merritt was living in Reno at the time, working nights as a mechanic and splitting rent with a friend from trade school. He was flipping through headlines on his laptop during a slow shift when he saw her name. At first he thought it was a glitch, a recycled article. But then he saw the photo. The ring, resting on a latex glove. The name Angela half faded in the engraving. He didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone and called the sheriff's office. The voice on the other end sounded skeptical until he said her full name. "Angela Merritt was my mother," Cody said quietly. "That's her ring. I've seen it in pictures. She wore it even after the divorce." There was a pause on the line. "We'll need a statement," the deputy said, "and possibly a DNA swab." Cody agreed to everything. The ring was sent to the state forensics lab in Carson City. Though decades of heat and exposure had degraded it, trace residue clung to the underside of the band, packed into the grooved engraving and preserved under mineral buildup. The results weren't definitive, but chilling. Traces of oxidized blood protein, too old for a full DNA profile, but consistent with human origin, and enough to suggest the ring hadn't just fallen off, it had been ripped off. Detective Lynn Parker had been with the department just 6 months, newly transferred from Las Vegas, young, sharp, and not yet jaded enough to ignore an old case making new noise. She pulled Angela's file, thick with yellowed pages, grainy photos, and notes typed on manual typewriters, the kind of case people said couldn't be solved because too much time had passed. But Parker didn't care. She ordered the file reopened. She reviewed the original maps, noting where Angela's car had been found, the rest stop that was now partially fenced off for demolition. A site no longer in use, a place time had nearly erased. She requested a ground-penetrating radar scan. She brought in cadaver dogs, and then she waited. 3 weeks into the search, one of the dogs, Jasper, a 9-year-old Belgian Malinois, stopped short in front of the old maintenance shed. His handler called out. The dog circled back, barked, then sat, still, intent. The shed had been built in 1991, 4 years after Angela vanished. Its concrete foundation had never been disturbed, until now. The county sent in a demolition crew. Jackhammers tore through the foundation slab, and beneath the cracked concrete, bones, human, female, curled in on themselves, wrapped loosely in what remained of denim and nylon fibers, a rusted purse buckle, a melted plastic hair clip. She hadn't wandered off. She hadn't run away. Angela had been here the whole time, buried beneath a building meant to hold brooms and rakes, and for 20 years, no one ever thought to look. The bones were fragile, sun-bleached by years of dry heat under concrete. What remained of the clothing was little more than threads, shredded denim, nylon, and a single sneaker sole warped by time. There was no wallet, no photo ID, no fingerprints to lift. But one thing hadn't faded. Angela Merritt had a chipped molar on her upper right side, visible in the 1984 dental records her sister had insisted on filing in the original missing persons report. The forensic odontologist took one look and nodded. It was her. Angela had been found. Cody got the call on a Tuesday afternoon. He had just finished tightening the wheel assembly on a Buick Skylark when his phone buzzed in his back pocket. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something told him to answer. The voice on the other end was calm, rehearsed, probably written on a notepad in front of them. "Mr. Merritt, I'm calling on behalf of the Nye County Sheriff's Office. We've recovered skeletal remains consistent with your mother's description. Dental records confirm identity. I'm so sorry for your loss." There was a silence, the kind that made time feel heavy. Cody didn't cry. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then came the question, quiet, but sharp. "Was she alone?" The detective hesitated, not out of cruelty, out of uncertainty about how to say what came next. "No," she said finally. "There was another set of remains recovered. Smaller, male, estimated age is between 5 and 7. Cody felt his throat tighten. His grip loosened around the phone. It wasn't possible. He had always believed, always been told, that he was left at the neighbors that night, that Angela had gone somewhere alone, that whatever happened, it didn't involve him. He remembered Dolores Finch giving him cereal the next morning. He remembered her saying his mom had probably just gone to get gas. So who was the boy? The detective's voice came through the line again, softer this time. There were no identifying materials with the second body, no ID, no shoes, just fragments of clothing. We're sending both sets of remains for further analysis, including mitochondrial DNA extraction. But Cody wasn't listening anymore, because in the deepest corner of his memory, something stirred. A faint, flickering image of being in the back seat of a car at night. His mother's voice saying, "We're just going for a drive, sweetheart. Just you and me." Had that been real? Had she come to get him? Had he gone with her after all? He hung up the phone without another word. Then he sat on the edge of the garage floor, face in his hands, the noise of the world muffled by the sound of something he hadn't felt in years. Doubt. The kind that doesn't just haunt you. It rewrites everything you thought you knew. By the time investigators reached out to Dolores Finch, she was 81 years old and living in a quiet, beige retirement facility outside Boise, Idaho. The kind of place with weekly bingo, creaking wheelchairs, and bulletin boards filled with low-sodium potluck flyers. She answered the door herself, thin, wiry, and suspicious of anyone in uniform. Her memory was still sharp, though a little selective. At first, she stuck to the same story she'd told in 1987. Angela Merritt had dropped off Cody before her shift, said she'd be back by 10 p.m. She never showed up. Dolores assumed she'd had car trouble. End of story. But this time, Detective Lynn Parker didn't just ask. She listened differently, let the silences linger, let Dolores fill the space with her own discomfort. And under that pressure, something cracked. Dolores folded her hands over her walker and sighed. "She did come back that night," she said quietly. Parker leaned in. "Angela?" Dolores nodded. "Said she was taking Cody on a weekend trip. Said it was last minute, spontaneous. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to get in the way." Parker scribbled, but didn't interrupt. "She seemed on edge," Dolores added. "Kept looking out the window. Wouldn't even sit down. Just kept saying, 'We'll be back Sunday night.' I helped Cody put on his shoes. He was tired, sleepy. He asked if he could bring his toy car. She said no." Parker's pen stopped, because this version didn't match what was in the file. The 1987 phone records, painstakingly recovered from microfiche, told a different story. That night, Angela had made one call from a payphone near the diner, a 42-second call to a motel off Route 95. Timestamped at 10:12 p.m., about an hour after her shift ended. The motel, now defunct, had once catered to long-haul drivers and travelers avoiding the Vegas traffic. Detective Parker tracked down the former manager, Leonard Griggs, now 67, living in Laughlin. He remembered the night. He didn't remember the name, but he remembered the woman. "She checked in alone," he said. "Real skittish. Asked for a room near the back. Didn't even take the key. Said she needed to make a call first. I saw her pacing outside. Then the phone rang at the front desk. She answered it in the booth and just froze. After that, she got in her car and peeled out." "Did she have a child with her?" Parker asked. Griggs shook his head. "No, definitely not. I'd remember that." Back in Idaho, Dolores was confronted with this contradiction. "We have a witness who says Angela checked in alone," Parker said. "We also have your original statement from 1987, where you never mentioned any pickup." Dolores stiffened. "She told me not to say anything," she said. "Said it was safer that way, that people were watching. I didn't want trouble." "Who was watching?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But she looked scared, like someone was close, too close." "Was Cody with her when she left your house?" Dolores hesitated, blinked. "I don't remember anymore." But Parker knew that wasn't true, because sometimes silence isn't a lack of memory. It's a choice, and someone had made the choice to erase that night, for good. Until now. Angela's original missing persons file was a yellowed folder packed with typed reports, Polaroids, hand-drawn maps, and hastily scribbled margin notes in blue pen. One of those notes had always bothered Detective Lynn Parker. R. Clevin, semi-truck, New Mexico plates. It was written in shaky handwriting, barely legible, and hadn't been followed up in the original investigation beyond a brief interview. Parker flipped through the file again. Clevin's name appeared only once, in a supplemental officer's note. He had been a regular at the Silver Spoon Diner, always sat in Angela's section, always left big tips and asked too many personal questions. There were rumors. A waitress said she once saw him waiting in the parking lot after Angela's shift, his rig idling in the dark. Another said Angela planned to report him after he made a crude comment. But she never filed a formal complaint, and without a report, there was no paper trail. In 1987, it had all been speculation. No charges, no surveillance footage, no hard evidence. Just another drifter with a quiet stare and a license plate from out of state. But the game had changed. Modern forensic technology allowed Parker to reprocess evidence previously considered irrelevant. Among the items collected from Angela's car in 1987 was a cracked hairbrush, her own. But inside it, lodged between bristles, was a single strand of hair that didn't belong to her. It had been bagged and logged, but never tested. Until now. The lab extracted a partial DNA profile from the root, just enough to run through CODIS. The result came back with a hit. Male. Randy Clevin. Parker dug deeper. Clevin had no convictions, but what she found made her skin crawl. A sealed assault record from 1982 in Arizona. Charges dismissed after the victim, another waitress, refused to testify. Her name had been redacted. The file had been buried in a clerical abyss for decades. Parker requested it unsealed. The victim had been 23. The attack took place behind a roadside diner after closing. She had described the man as quiet, polite, and dangerous. He drove a truck, New Mexico plates. Parker placed a call to the Nevada State Highway Patrol and asked for way station logs from the summer of 1987. The records, kept in a dusty archive of microfilm, revealed that a rig registered to Randy Clevin passed through a checkpoint 22 miles west of Tonopah, just after midnight on August 19th, roughly 3 hours after Angela's shift ended, and 1 hour after she was last seen alive. The theory that had once been a whisper in the margins was now thunder on paper. Angela hadn't gone missing. She had been hunted, and the man who'd done it had stayed hidden behind the wheels of a 1,000-mile route for 20 years. But the desert, silent as it may be, doesn't forget. And now, neither would the law. Randy Clevin was arrested at a rest stop outside Provo, Utah, on a humid September morning in 2008. He was refueling his rig, just another anonymous face in the transient underworld of long-haul trucking. He'd been running loads between Salt Lake and Phoenix under a new company name, hiding in plain sight. The arrest was quiet. No chase, no resistance. 2 plainclothes officers approached while he was rinsing his windshield. Clevin didn't run, but the second he heard the name Angela Merritt, his body stiffened. His jaw clenched. "You've got the wrong guy," he said. But he didn't ask why he was being arrested. And that told the detectives everything they needed to know. During the interrogations, Clevin denied everything. He claimed he'd eaten at the Silver Spoon, maybe once or twice, and didn't remember Angela Merritt. He said he had never been in Tonopah after dark, that he had no idea how his DNA could have ended up in her car. But he had no alibi for the night of August 18th, 1987. And the evidence had waited long enough. Prosecutors moved fast. By early 2009, the case went before a grand jury. They presented the ring, Angela's wedding band, unearthed from a drainpipe near the rest stop where she was last seen. They presented the motel call records, proving Angela had checked in alone and left abruptly after receiving a phone call traced to a payphone Clevin was known to have used. Then came the forensic match, a single hair, buried for 2 decades in a bag of overlooked evidence, now linked to a man with a sealed record of violence against women. Still, it was circumstantial, enough to raise suspicion, but not to seal a conviction, until someone stepped forward. She was living in Oregon now. Lisa Morales, a former waitress who'd worked 2 booths down from Angela at the Silver Spoon in the mid-'80s. She had left Tonopah shortly after Angela's disappearance. No one had been able to locate her during the initial investigation. But after the story broke again in 2007, she saw Angela's name in the paper. It haunted her. For months. Finally, she reached out, and what she said changed everything. On the stand, Lisa testified that in the weeks before Angela vanished, they often walked out to the parking lot together after closing, that Angela had become paranoid, nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder. She told me someone had been watching her, Lisa said, that she'd see this black semi parked across from her apartment late at night. She paused, voice trembling. She was scared, not just for herself. She said, "If anything happens to me, tell someone I didn't just run. I'd never leave Cody behind." The courtroom was silent. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Cody sat in the front row every day, jaw set, eyes forward. He was 27 now, the same age his mother had been when she disappeared. He listened to testimony about motel keys, tire tracks, hair fibers, and desert bones. He heard the defense call it a coincidence. Heard Clevin's lawyer argue that memory fades, evidence degrades, and that a man's life shouldn't be destroyed by a hair and a hunch. But Cody also saw the jury when they looked at Angela's photo. He saw them shift in their seats. He saw something else settle into the room. Conviction. In June 2010, Randy Clevin was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder, one for Angela Merritt and one for the unidentified boy found beside her. To this day, the identity of that child remains unconfirmed. But Cody knows the truth, and the desert, after 20 years of silence, finally told the story no one else could. The funeral was small. No reporters, no news vans, just a folding chair set up beside a windswept cemetery on the edge of Tonopah, where the mountains in the distance look like sleeping giants and the wind hums like it's carrying stories too old to repeat. Angela Merritt and the unidentified boy were laid to rest beneath a shared headstone. No one knew the boy's name. No one ever came forward. DNA databases turned up nothing. No matches, no relatives, just silence. But Cody insisted they be buried together, side by side, because however they left this world, whoever that child was, he hadn't left it alone. The headstone was simple. No marble, no ornate carvings, just a slab of smoothed desert stone, hand-picked by Cody himself. Etched across the face were only 2 lines. She loved beyond fear. He rests in her arms. Cody visits once a year, always on August 18th. He drives in from Reno, 4 hours each way, without telling anyone. No social media posts, no messages to family. Just him, the road, and the same brown paper bag on the passenger seat. Inside, 2 sunflowers. One for Angela, his mother who taught him love before language, and one for the boy, the ghost child buried beside her. The child whose name was never spoken, but whose presence Cody feels every time the wind shifts just so. He doesn't speak much at the gravesite, just stands there, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. Sometimes he plays an old cassette in the car afterwards, one of his mom singing lullabies she recorded when he was little. The tape is worn, fuzzy, but her voice is still there, still warm, still fearless. There are things the desert keeps well: bones, secrets, time. But sometimes, only sometimes, it leaves behind just enough. A ring, a hair, a whisper in the shape of justice. Enough to be found. Enough to bring someone home.